Microgreens may be small in stature, but they are huge on flavor and nutrition. Studies have shown that depending on the type, microgreens can have between 4 and 40 times the amount of nutrients found in the same plant varieties' mature greens. Talk about a superfood. And what's even better, you can grow microgreens at home from seed to harvest in 7 to 10 days. Here's how to do it. This year my seed order included sunflower and pea shoots, broccoli, radish, and arugula microgreens. So first we'll just talk about the microgreens. Here's how you grow broccoli, radish, and arugula. So before you get started, you want to make sure that you have all your materials in place. That includes both a top and bottom tray, which we'll talk about in a second, your seeds, of course, a growing medium, and a way to water things. Once you have all those things gathered, you're ready to start. Here we go. So the size of the tray that you use really depends on your objective. How much microgreens do you really want to grow? You'll find that commercial growers oftentimes will use trays that are 10 inches by 20 inches, which is pretty big for what I'm doing just with microgreens here in my house for us to eat. So I'm actually using 8 by 10. And notice that I'm not using some sort of flashy tray that I got from a big box store or from a seed catalog. I'm actually just using food-safe aluminum tins. These aluminum pans are perfect for me. They're the right size, they're the right depth, and they're definitely the right price. So for your broccoli, radish, and arugula microgreens, you're going to want to use 2 trays. Reason being, one of the trays is going to be your water vessel. To give these microgreens the moisture that they need, you're going to be doing what's called bottom watering. You're not going to water from the top. You don't want the leaves of these microgreens to get wet. What that can do is it can provide a stagnant environment that is perfect for the development of mold. You definitely don't want to be growing mold. You want to be growing microgreens. So what you're going to want to do with your top tray is make sure that it has holes in it. Because I'm using these food grade aluminum pans, I had to poke my holes in it. It wasn't that big of a deal. It took me maybe 5 minutes. But now this is my top tray, and I can put my growing medium in, I could put my seeds on, I could put water in my bottom tray, I put my top tray inside my bottom tray, and now I'm bottom watering. All right, now that we get what we're after, it's time to put our growing medium inside of our top tray. The growing medium that I'm using today is my DIY seed starter mix. 4 parts cocoa coir, 1 part perlite, and 1 part vermiculite. After you get the soil in the tray, just make sure that you level things off. A nice pat with your hands are good, but don't press down and compress the soil. You want things to stay nice and aerated. Now remember, you want your growing medium to be nice and watered. If you feel good about the moisture levels, I still recommend maybe just spraying the top a little bit with some water. But if you really want to be sure, you can take the bottom tray, pour some water in, and then put the tray with your soil on top. The water will draw up through the holes in the top tray, and it'll make sure that your growing medium is nice and saturated. Of course, you don't want it to be muddy, but you do want to make sure that it's saturated. This is going to be super important for the next step. Once your tray is prepped, you're ready to add your seeds. When dealing with such small seeds, a little bit goes a long way. You want to make sure that you're not overseeding your tray. So make sure that based on whichever microgreen it is that you're growing, you're looking up the right proportions of seeds to your size tray. For my 8 by 10 tray, we need between 5 and 7 grams of arugula seeds. Now that's not going to seem like much at all, but I promise you it's going to cover the top of your tray. After weighing them out, broadcast the seeds by hand, sprinkling it like you're seasoning with salt. Make sure you're getting all the way to the edges and into the corners, and make sure that you pay attention to any bald patches so you can sprinkle some seeds onto those. This is exactly the coverage that I'm looking for. And for the first and last time, you're allowed to top water just by spraying a light mist of water onto the surface of the seeds. What this does is it helps secure them a little bit more firmly into the soil, and it also gives them a little bit of moisture. This is going to kickstart germination. And your arugula is done. It's ready to go. We're going to set this tray out of the way because we still have 2 trays to fill. one with radish and one with broccoli. And here they are. It's that simple. All 3 trays are filled. I've got my radish, my broccoli, and my arugula. Super excited to get these going. But that was only step 1, and there were a few crucial steps that we need to follow in order to be successful in growing microgreens. The rest of our microgreen journey is actually going to be pretty hands-off, but the first couple days is crucial to ensure good germination. We're actually going to stack these trays on top of each other and then put an empty tray on top of the top tray. We'll then add a little bit of weight to that top tray. These 5-pound bricks will do the trick. I'll put 3 of these in the top tray. What this is going to do is it's going to help push those seeds down ever so slightly into the soil, ensuring great contact with the soil. That, combined with the moisture level that we added in and that we sprayed onto the seeds, is going to help these seeds start to open up. My basement is my indoor grow space, so I'm going to take one of my grow shelves and dedicate that as my germination spot for microgreens. Because it's colder where I am right now, the humidity levels in the house are actually already pretty low, so I don't have to worry too much about humidity and risk of mold. But as things start to heat up, as I continue to grow microgreens into the warmer months, I am going to use a dehumidifier down here. You want things to be between 30 and 40% humidity, no higher, or you're really tempting mold to develop. And for the purposes of microgreens, you can't really go too low on humidity. So if you already live in a really dry area, then you don't have to worry about dehumidifying or humidifying. Now that our microgreens are prepped, we can focus on our shoots. Today we're going to grow sunflower and pea shoots. Many of the materials that we use for growing the microgreens are the same materials that we'll use to grow our shoots, but there are some additional preparation steps when growing shoots versus microgreens. Because shoots like sunflowers have husks on them, you want to make sure that you're rinsing them off, you're sanitizing them, and then you're soaking them for a few hours in order to help mitigate any risk of molding while you're growing your shoots. So as we prepare to get our peas and our sunflowers into trays, first we're going to rinse them off, then we're going to sanitize them for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll soak them for about 8 hours before putting them into the tray. First, like with your microgreens, you're going to want to weigh out your shoot seeds. Given the size of the trays I'm using, for sunflowers, I'm looking for 30 to 40 grams. And for our peas, we're going to need about double the amount, between 60 and 80 grams. Now would also be a good time to pick through your seeds to make sure you're removing any broken, damaged, or otherwise just weird looking seeds. After you've weighed your shoot seeds, it's probably not a bad idea just to give them a good rinse and get some of the dust off. Once they're rinsed off, now it's time to sanitize. And sanitizing will only take about 5 to 10 minutes. Really not a super long process. Today I'm using hydrogen peroxide as my sanitizer, but there are other methods that you can find online that work just as well. To sanitize, soak your seeds in 1 tablespoon of 3% food-grade hydrogen peroxide per cup of water. I'm soaking my seeds in 2 cups of water, so I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of peroxide. The sanitizing process will protect your shoots by killing off any of the nasty stuff that could be hitching a ride on the outer shell. And remember, you only need to sanitize your seeds for 5 to 10 minutes. After 5 to 10 minutes, drain the seeds and then rinse them to remove any remaining sanitizing solution. And now that your seeds are rinsed and sanitized, it's time for the soak. This is going to take about 8 hours. You want to make sure that you use plenty of water, especially for peas, because peas will plump up a little bit as they soak. And now we wait. You can leave them in your workstation or you can put them somewhere else out of the way. But in 8 hours, we'll check on them and they should be good to go. All right, it's been 8 hours. Time to give these a good rinse and then get them into trays. All right, we're all rinsed off and ready to go. Now we're going to sow these seeds very similarly to the way that we did the microgreens. They're going to go into a tray with some really nice quality growing medium. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to put them in a tray that has holes. Why? Because we're actually going to top water our sunflowers and our peas. Reason being, these shoots, specifically the sunflowers, have a really hard husk that their leaves need to remove as they grow. What we do when we water from the top is we help soften those husks. So the husks will release from the first leaves and we'll be able to harvest hassle-free. Now it's okay to bottom water peas, but it's not really necessary. And since it's not necessary and it only takes one tray to top water, I'm going to choose to top water this time. Just know that with pea shoots, they need even, consistent watering. While some of these microgreens that we're growing will actually allow to wilt before we water, we can't do that with peas. Pea shoots will not recover if they go dry. So always keep your pea shoots well watered. Fill your trays with a high quality, non-fertilized growing medium. I'm using my DIY starter mix that's 4 parts cocoa coir, 1 part vermiculite, and 1 part perlite. And of course, you want to make sure that your mix is well watered. You need a good bit of moisture in order to get these seeds to activate. Unlike the microgreen seeds, where we sprayed them down with a little bit of water after putting them into the tray, you don't need to do that with your peas and sunflowers. Remember, these just soaked for 8 full hours. They're plenty moist. Once your trays are filled, you can start adding the seeds. Broadcast your peas and sunflower seeds in an even single layer on top of your seed starting mix. It might seem like you have way too much, but don't worry, these are going to grow just fine in close quarters. Make sure you fill any open spaces. You can move these around a little bit. Moving them around after they hit the soil is no big deal. And once your peas are in place, do the same thing with your sunflower seeds in the other tray. With your sunflower seeds, you might even find that just mounding them all up in the center and then smearing them across the soil with your hand does the trick. And there it is, your pea and sunflower shoots are ready to be stacked, put on the shelf, and start growing. Now, just like our microgreens where we stacked the trays and added weights to the top, we're going to do the same with our pea and sunflower shoots. Let's get them downstairs. So we just placed the pea and sunflower seed shoots onto the shelf. We've got them weighted. I can't wait for these to germinate. We should start to see signs within the next 24 to 36 hours of these seeds starting to grow. And speaking of germination time, it's been just about 24 hours since we sowed our arugula, broccoli, and radish microgreens. Let's take a look and see how they're doing. Now remember, in order we have our arugula, our broccoli, and our radish. Let's check out the radish since those are the biggest seeds, and let's see how they're doing. All right, there might be a little bit of germination here, but let's still give it some more time. I bet within the next 12 hours, we'll be able to see some shoots. Time for the broccoli. Pretty much the same as the radish. There might be a little bit of germination, but nothing much to speak of just yet. Finally, the arugula. Oh, look at that. See that? We've got lots of germination going on. These arugula seeds are growing super quickly. Get the bricks back on. All right, well, there you go. That's our 24-hour check on our arugula, broccoli, and radish. It's super cool that just within 24 hours, we're already seeing signs of growth, especially from the arugula. But it should only be a matter of another 12, maybe 18 hours before the broccoli and radish is starting to look like the arugula tray. And because our pea and sunflower shoots were sown 24 hours after our microgreens and they're bigger seeds, they're going to take a little bit longer to germinate, but that'll be fine. I suspect that within the next 48 hours, we're going to start to see some signs of life from our peas and our sunflowers. But as soon as these start germinating, watch out. They're going to grow incredibly fast. And before you know it, we're going to be harvesting all 5 of these microgreens and shoots within a matter of about 10 days. Get excited. Step 1 is done, and it was super easy. Now there's not a lot for us to do in step 2. Really, we just need to wait it out. We need to check every 12 or 24 hours and see how they're doing. The next step after that is really where we have to pay attention, because we have to know exactly when is best to pull them out from under the weights and put them under lights. Then we'll have to manage the light, the airflow, and their water levels to ensure that they're growing to their maximum potential. Remember, unlike the gardening that we're used to, this is a super accelerated process. We're going to go from seed to harvest in a matter of 10 days, and I'm going to take you through each step in this video. So we're going to let these hang out for the next 24 hours or so, and I'm going to check back and we'll see how they're doing. All right, here we are checking in. It's 24 hours for the peas and sunflowers, and it's 48 hours for the arugula, broccoli, and radish. Let's take a look at the peas and sunflowers first. And then we're actually going to bring the arugula, radish, and broccoli upstairs because the lighting's a little bit better and we can see how things are going after 2 days of sitting here in the trays with weights on top. Here we go. All right, let's take a look at the peas. There's a little bit, you can see some of them opening up. It's going to take a little bit longer, obviously, but some good progress for sure. You can already see some of them emerging. Sunflowers, not a lot just yet, but again, it's early. It's been 24 hours. It's going to take probably a good 72 hours for these sunflowers to start emerging and start shedding their hulls. Let's get the weights back on the sunflowers and the peas, and then let's bring the arugula, broccoli, and radish upstairs and check out how they're doing after 48 hours. All right, so remember at 24 hours, we checked the arugula, broccoli, and radish. The arugula was looking really good, was already starting to open up quite a bit, saw quite a few radicals coming out of the seeds. What we didn't see was too much activity yet from the radish and the broccoli. We saw a little bit, but not a whole lot. But if we look now, we can actually already see just around the edges that we're getting some real good activity, especially from the radishes. So let's take a closer look. First, we're going to look at the radish. Look at this around the edges. You can already see them coming out. Look at that. Seeing lots of good activity from the radish. This is super encouraging. We're seeing tons of signs of germination from these radish seeds. But you can see them opening up and you can see the radicals emerging. This is great. We really only need a couple of days before we're going to be able to get these under lights. Now it's time to check out the broccoli, see how that's doing. The broccoli is looking great. We're getting tons of germination. I think we're on track here for within the next, call it day and a half, we might be able to put these under grow lights. I'm really excited to see how these are doing tomorrow. And for the final check for 48 hours, the crown jewel, the arugula, we already know that after 24 hours, they were emerging really nicely. Let's see how they're doing now that they've had 2 days under weight. Just look at this. This is absolutely incredible. This arugula has sprouted better than I ever expected. I truly cannot believe it has only been 48 hours since we sowed these seeds. Look at the germination rate on these seeds. I don't see any seeds here in this entire tray that haven't started to open up already. So one of the things that might start to freak you out a little bit as a microgreen grower is if you start to see something like this. Now don't worry, this isn't mold. The closer you look, the more apparent it becomes that these are root hairs. So this is perfectly normal. So don't let this discourage you if this is what you see when you lift off the tray. Everything is working perfectly, exactly as we want it. And truly, within a matter of the next, I'm going to say 18 to 24 hours, we might be able to put this arugula under light and kick off step 3. There we go. How cool is that? I would call this a very successful 48-hour check-in. I'm going to get these 3 back downstairs, get them under weights again, and we're going to check them again a day from now. Super excited about how well they're doing, and I can't wait to see what tomorrow brings for our pea and sunflower shoots. We'll see you then. All right, here we go. It's the 72-hour check for our arugula, broccoli, and radish microgreens, and our 48-hour check for our peas and our sunflowers. Let's see how they're doing. The radish is looking great. You can see around the edges that they're continuing to germinate really well. You can see the same thing with the broccoli. Now we'll pull these trays off in a second so we can actually see how they're doing, but things are looking really nice so far. And this right here is exactly what you're looking for. The arugula, you can see that these are growing super well. Look at those. Those are little plants. I bet it's time for us to put the arugula under grow lights. Can't wait to check it out. Now, as far as the peas and sunflowers go, the peas are looking really well. Here on the edges, you can see tons of germination, which is awesome. On the sunflowers, you can't see so much, but we're about to pull the weights off and check under the trays. This is going to be great. All right, so not much on the sunflowers, but you definitely do start to see some germination, which is great. These are probably going to need another 48 hours or so. Remember, these are thick husks that these sunflowers are in. So it's going to take a little bit for them to germinate. Overall, though, these are looking really good. Look at the peas. These are germinating super well. This is great. We probably only have another day, day and a half before we can get these under lights. We're getting close. So I'm super excited because we're going to be able to put these peas under light really shortly. Now let's take a look over here at the arugula, broccoli, and radish. That is what you want to see. Check out this arugula. This is awesome. This is exactly what we're looking for. This right here is a bed of about 1/2 inch shoots. This is what you want when you're putting them under lights. So we're actually going to take the arugula now and we're going to put them under the light. And then we'll take a look at them again a little bit in a second. The broccoli is exactly where the arugula was 24 hours ago. So I'd be willing to bet that this broccoli is going to be ready in another day, maybe even 18 hours. I'll take a look. And same with the radish. This is super encouraging. The radish seeds are sprouting incredibly well. I bet it's another day before we put these under lights. And then here's what we're looking at with the arugula. This is incredible. Notice how the ones on the margins, they're already greened up. That's because they weren't totally covered by the tray on top that had the weights on them. The ones in the middle, those didn't have any access to light. But now that they're under the grow light, they're going to green up really quickly. This is awesome. These are growing exactly as we need them to. Look at how well they've filled out. This is great. Things are growing exactly as we planned. Now that we have the arugula under lights, we have to do something else, and that is we have to add water. So these seeds have soaked up all the moisture that they can, and they need some extra water. We're going to need to water this regularly. And remember, we're watering from the bottom. The reason we're watering from the bottom for these microgreens is we want to make sure that none of the foliage gets wet. Foliage getting wet can help promote mold. And obviously, we don't want mold in this process. So we're going to remove the top tray that has some holes in it. We're going to pour some water into the bottom tray. We're going to put the top tray back on. So those holes that we put in the top tray are going to draw in water from the bottom tray and keep our microgreens nice and watered. So all we have to do is just pull this tray off. And remember, it has the holes in the bottom, so it's going to soak up all of this water. So we're going to fill the bottom tray with water to maybe about 1 inch. And then we'll pop this tray back on. And very, very quickly, this mix is going to soak up this water. And the arugula is going to take on the water. And this is going to be great for these little plants. So now we have the arugula under light and we have it watered. There's a third component that we need, and it's crucially important to making sure that these plants remain healthy as they grow, and that's airflow. So we're going to add a fan next to the arugula tray that is going to continue to blow air for 24 hours, 7 days a week from now on while the arugula sits there and grows. The fan is going to keep the air from becoming stagnant. Stagnant plus moisture equals mold, and we want to avoid the mold. So we're going to keep the air flowing while these plants are under light and well watered, and they're going to keep growing for the next 4 or 5 days until we're ready to harvest and eat them. Once your plants are under light, you want the light to be on them for at least 16 hours a day. Some people even just turn the lights on and leave them on until they're ready for harvest. You could experiment with the right amount of time for lights, but I recommend at least 16 hours on, 8 hours off every single day. We'll check back in 24 hours to see how the radish and broccoli microgreens and the pea and sunflower shoots are doing. I'm super excited that we're about to get all of these under lights, and we're going to be harvesting within the next week. All right, here we go. The 96-hour check on the microgreens and 72 hours on the shoots. Let's see how we're doing. This right here is exactly what we're looking for. The radish and the broccoli are both telling us that they are ready to come out from under the weights and go under the lights. Let's see how the peas and sunflowers are looking. Sunflowers are looking great. Look at all those radicals. Yeah, this is going to be another 24, maybe 36 hours before we can get the sunflowers under light. Check out the peas. This is exactly what we're looking for. It's just a matter of time before all these microgreens and shoots are going to be under light. This is awesome. All right, we'll get the weights back onto the sunflower and pea shoots. And now it's time for us to get the radish and broccoli under light. Check out the broccoli. So remember yesterday, the arugula was the same color as the broccoli. And now just being under lights for 24 hours, look at how much they've greened up. And they've filled out as well. That's what we're going to get from the broccoli. You can already see some of the green around the edges. All of these are going to green up overnight. Within 12 hours, this is going to look just like this. Same with the radish. So we're going to get the radish under light too. We'll put it down here with the broccoli and the arugula. And we'll get the fan going. Look at this radish. And again, to bottom water, all we need to do is just lift up the top tray and pour some water in. You don't need too much. Maybe a ½ inch to an inch is perfectly fine. It's going to help saturate that soil and help give these microgreens the moisture that they need. And we'll keep checking on these every day just to make sure that the moisture level's good. Now that they're under lights and now that they have the airflow, really we just need to make sure that the moisture is good, that they continue to grow and green up. These are going to get nice and tall in no time. We're probably only about 2 days, maybe 2.5 days away from harvest. And just like that, 4 days in, the arugula, broccoli, and radish are all under the lights. Now, 3 days in on our pea and sunflower shoots, we probably only have another day and a half before they're under lights. And then before you know it, we'll be harvesting. Super exciting. I'll check in again in another 24 hours and we'll see how things are doing. All right, quick update now. We've got the 5-day update on the radish, broccoli, and arugula, and the 4-day, the 96-hour update on the sunflower and pea shoots. It's going to be a quick update because really we just have the radish, broccoli, and arugula under the lights right now, just letting them grow. It's going to take a few days and then we'll be ready to harvest. For this 5-day check, I'll just check the moisture level of the radish, broccoli, and arugula to make sure that they're doing well under lights and that they don't need more water. For the sunflower and pea shoots, we're going to see how close they are to getting out from under the weight and under the lights. Check out the arugula, nice and green, and then of course, like we talked about, the broccoli greened up super nicely being under lights for 24 hours. The radish has really taken off. Radish has already grown taller now than the arugula, so being under lights has definitely helped the radish. This is only going to be another day, maybe day and a half, and then I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to start harvesting. Now let's take a look at the sunflower and pea shoots. The peas, they're starting to poke out around the edges, starting to tell us that they're getting close to being ready. Sunflower, let's take a look. Sunflower is still doing okay. Got lots of radicals. Definitely seeing germination, which is great. The sunflower shoots are taking a little bit longer, but that's okay. It's not super warm down here, and it's actually been really, really cold outside. So from a temperature standpoint, we're only in the low 70s. It's been teetering between 70 and 71 down here in the basement this whole time. And because these trays aren't sitting on heating mats, we're really just kind of letting the room's conditions do the work. The sunflowers, if they were sitting on heating mats or if it were warmer down here in the basement, they would have shot up a lot more quickly than they have to this point. But I'm not too worried about it. I'll probably give them another day and then I'm just going to put them under light. I'll put them under light and let them start to grow, and then I might do what's called a blackout period. In the blackout period, we're going to force the sunflower shoots to really stretch for light. If we block the light from the sunflower shoots once they've fully emerged from the husks, they're going to be trying to find light. They're going to grow taller, they're going to grow longer, they're going to grow stronger because they're reaching for the light. So that might be one of the ways that we can get the sunflowers to catch up with the rest of the microgreens. All right, here we go. Day 6 for the radish, broccoli, and arugula. Day 5 for pea and sunflower shoots. Let's take a look. And just as I was suspecting, the radish is pretty much ready to be harvested. I could harvest this right now if I want to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until tomorrow. I'll give it another 12 hours, let it grow a little bit, It does need a little bit of water, but I'm actually going to withhold water because I'm going to harvest this 12 hours from now. And you always want to make sure that you do that because you don't want to get moisture on the microgreens as you harvest them. It's going to make them tough to store. If you store these properly, they can last a week, 10 days in the fridge. But if they're wet when you store them, they can become susceptible to mold, other types of rot. You don't want to deal with that. You want the experience to be as fresh as possible when you eat these, and by keeping them dry, you're doing just that. And taking a look at the broccoli and arugula, they're not far behind. Again, it's probably going to be maybe another day and a half, and then we'll be harvesting these as well. And you'll know that microgreens are ready for harvest when they're standing about 3 inches tall. Once they get about that tall, you want to make sure that you're diligent with harvesting. You don't want them to grow too much more because if they continue to grow, they're going to start to grow their true leaves. And in doing so, the tender stems that you're going to be eating are going to start to get really woody. You're also going to end up getting a lot of unwanted bitterness from the greens if you let them go too far before harvesting. Now that we've checked out progress on our microgreens, let's take a look at the pea and sunflower shoots after 5 days. Taking a quick look at the sunflower shoots, they're still coming along nicely. You can see a lot of emergence. These are all germinating really well. The rates are actually pretty impressive. These are going to grow for another, I'm going to give them a day, day and a half, and then I'll just put them under light and let them start to grow out a little bit more. And the peas look great. I could put these under lights right now, but since I'm going to be down here in about 12 hours so I can grab the radish and harvest those, I'll give the peas a little bit more time under weight, and then in 12 hours, I'll pop these under lights. And before you know it, we'll be harvesting pea shoots. In all, I'm super impressed with how everything is progressing. We are right on track. Remember, we talked about this being a 7 to 10 day process. Well, we're going to hit just over 6 days for the radish. We're going to be at about 7 days right on for the broccoli and the arugula. And then I'd be willing to bet by day 10, the peas and the sunflowers are going to be harvested. I'll be back in 12 hours and we'll take things upstairs as we harvest the radish microgreens. All right, it's been another 12 hours and as expected, the radish is ready to be harvested. I'm going to take them upstairs and show you how to harvest them. But before I do that, I'm going to get these pea shoots under the lights. Once your shoots are ready to go under lights, give them a good watering. Remember, they were only watered on day 1, and that was just by soaking them for 8 hours. They're going to be pretty thirsty by this point. And remember, with our pea and sunflower shoots, instead of bottom watering, we're going to water from the top. And now that we're ready to harvest, we only need a few key things. We need a sharpened knife, you need a container that you can put your harvested greens in. Get a digital scale, that'll help you know how big your yield was. Wash your hands, and I like to put a glove on the harvesting hand. I want to make sure that I'm keeping my microgreens as clean as possible for storage. Now when you're ready to harvest, you have to be very delicate. You want to make sure that you're not pulling up on the microgreens as you're trying to cut them. So you just want to grab a hold of just a little section of them. You want to bring your knife in, and then you want to slice in a nice even fashion. And as you slice, you'll be leaving the soil behind and you'll have microgreens in your gloved hand. If you end up pulling up some soil, no harm, no foul. Just make sure that you remove that doesn't go into the container with your microgreens. If you're not comfortable using a sharp knife for harvest, that's totally fine. Just grab some nice sharp kitchen shears and you can harvest all the same. Just make sure that you're getting there underneath, you're not making contact with the soil, and you'll be just fine. As you're harvesting, you might miss some, but that's fine. You can always go back and get the stranded ones. And And that's it. The first of our 5 microgreen varieties have been harvested in 6.5 days. I'm super excited to eat some of these radish greens with lunch today. And our yield, looking pretty good. We got 85 grams of our Triton radish microgreens from this 8x10 tray. I'm super excited to see what we get from the rest of our microgreens and shoots. I'll check back in 12 hours when we might be harvesting our broccoli and arugula. All right, we're here for the 7-day check on the broccoli and the arugula, and the 6-day check on the pea and the sunflower shoots. Things are looking great. I'm going to bring the broccoli and arugula upstairs and we're going to harvest in a second, but I want you to check out the peas now that they're under light, now that they're starting to green up. The peas are looking absolutely great. This is exactly what we want to see. It's just a matter of time before we're harvesting these. Broccoli and arugula looking super strong. Sunflower's still doing nicely. These are growing well. It's just a matter of time before we get these under lights, probably by tomorrow. Let's take the broccoli and arugula upstairs and get them harvested. Now these broccoli and arugula microgreens might not look as tall as the radish that we harvested earlier, but that's okay. These are definitely tall enough, and one of the things we definitely want to make sure of is that these don't start to grow their true leaves. As soon as they start to grow their true leaves, they're going to get really bitter, the stems are going to get super woody, and it's not going to be pleasant to eat. We're going to harvest these in the same way that we did the radishes, with a sharp knife, or if you prefer, some really sharp kitchen shears. Remember to be gentle with these microgreens. You don't want to grab them. You just sort of want to hold on to them as you're cutting them with the knife or with the scissors. And if you pull up even just a little bit, you're going to end up pulling the entire plant out, root and all, and that's not what you want. There are special harvesting knives that you can purchase from seed catalogs and from other specialty stores. I'm just using a sharp kitchen knife here. But if you want to use a knife and you feel better about using one that's specifically made for harvesting microgreens, then go ahead. You might also find from time to time that there's still a little bit of seed husk stuck to some of the leaves. You don't have to worry about that too much, but if you see it, you can just pull them off. It's not much to worry about, especially with these plant varieties, but you will see them from time to time. Make sure you grab any stragglers. You don't want any of this deliciousness to go to waste. And now that the broccoli is harvested, we do the same to the arugula. The scent is absolutely amazing. There is no mistake in what we're harvesting here. And we're all harvested on our broccoli and arugula. All we have left are the 2 shoots, our pea and sunflower. I bet the peas are going to be harvested within the next 2 days, and the sunflowers not too far behind that. I'll check back in 24 hours to recap day 7 for our pea and sunflower shoots. All right, here we are. It's day 7 for our pea and sunflower shoots. Let's check them out, see how they're doing. As expected, the peas are looking great. It's just going to be another day, day and a half. These are greening up really nicely. They're also going to start to open up pretty soon and start putting out tendrils. That's when we know that it's time for us to harvest. Let's check out the sunflowers really quickly. These are just a couple days behind, but that's pretty typical for sunflowers. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. There's been so much progress since yesterday. These are looking great. I'm going to end up giving these another day or so under weight, and then I'll probably take the weight off and give them a blackout period so they can stretch really nice and high toward the light. I'm super encouraged though. There are no signs of mold, no real issues here. These just take a little bit longer than the other microgreens, and that's totally fine. I'm excited for how well these are doing. Once these are under light, it's only going to be a couple more days until they're ready for harvest. All right, that was just a quick update. Things are looking super strong for day 7. I'll be back in 24 hours for the day 8 update. All right, we're on day 8 for our pea and sunflower shoots. Let's check them out, see how they're doing. The peas are looking great. I'll probably harvest these tomorrow. They could maybe use a little bit of water. I might give them some and then just give them another 24 hours. You don't want to water these within 12 hours of harvesting. So if I'm going to water them now, I'm committing to not harvesting them for another 18 to 24 hours, which I think could be fine. These are looking great. I think these are ready to come out from under weights. Let's let them stretch out. They could use some water too. Remember, they have not been watered this entire time. The only water that they received was when they were soaked before they were sown. So let's give them a good top watering. That top watering is going to help remove these seed holes from the leaves. That's one of the reasons why we want to top water the sunflowers. Top watering the sunflowers is going to help remove these husks off of the leaves. And now what we're going to do with the sunflowers, which is a little bit different from what we did with the other microgreens and the pea shoots, is we're going to give them another blackout period. These have spent their entire life in darkness thus far under weights. Now that they're not under weights anymore, we're going to continue to give them darkness, but we're going to put them under lights and we're going to add a fan. So it's going to get the airflow, it's already been watered, and it's going to be under lights, but it's not going to have direct access to the light. So what that means is it's going to stretch. It's going to try to get to the lights, and that's going to stretch out these stems quite a bit, and it's going to help these sunflowers catch up to the peas. These are going to grow super quickly in the next 24 hours. I'm really excited for the next check-in. It's going to be a stark contrast versus what we're seeing right now on day 8. To initiate a blackout period for your sunflower shoots, literally all you have to do is cover them up. Now that they're no longer underweight, these sunflower shoots are really going to start growing. I expect when we come back in the next 12 hours or so to check on these, this tray is going to be pushed up quite a bit from the sunflower shoots underneath. And then within the next 24 or 36 hours, these shoots are going to be ready for harvest. I continue to be super excited about the progress, and I hope you are too. I'm going to check back in the next 18 hours or so because I expect the peas will be ready by then, and the sunflower shoots will be ready to have direct access to light. All right, here we are, day 8 on our pea and sunflower shoots. Let's take a look. Pea shoots are getting close. We're looking for about 4 to 6 inches, and we're probably at about 4.5 for some of these. We're going to give them a little bit more time, but I suspect that we'll be harvesting these tomorrow. They also needed some water, so I made sure that I did that midday today. Remember with your peas, they are not going to recover the same way that your other microgreens will if they're underwatered. So don't let these wilt. Make sure that they stay nice and well watered the entire time they're in the tray. And check out the sunflower shoots. You can't see them yet, but remember, after we pulled them from under weight, we put them in blackout. And you can see this gap here in the tray. And you can see some of them even peeking out a little bit. That means that they want to be let out. And look at that. This is amazing. These were growing. They were reaching for the light. The blackout helped with stretching these out. Now that they're uncovered and they're under light, these are going to shoot up really quickly. I'm guessing it's another 18 to 24 hours before we're harvesting these. Also notice all of the holes that are still on these plants. This is why we want to make sure that these holes get nice and wet so the leaves will shed them. If they don't shed them, then we risk damaging the leaves by trying to pull them off, or even worse, they end up making it into the harvest. And you definitely don't want to bite into one of these when you're eating your sunflower shoots. If you try to wiggle the holes off yourself, it's possible that you could end up damaging the leaves, and you don't want to do that. So make sure that you're top watering well, that you're keeping the holes nice and moist. That'll keep them flexible enough so they should be falling off as the leaves open up. They could use a little bit of water, so we're going to take them now and we're going to top water them. And remember to get that fan going. So you want to make sure that you give them tons of airflow, especially because you're top watering. So these leaves are going to be nice and wet. Only 9 days in and we're almost there. We knew that the 3 microgreens were going to come first, and now the pea shoots and sunflower shoots are right behind. I'll check back in another 12 or 24 hours and we'll be harvesting. Here we are, it's day 10 and our peas are ready for harvest. Before we bring them upstairs, let's check out the sunflowers and see how they're doing. These are looking great. I'm going to leave these for another 12 hours just because we still have some of the first leaves that just shed the seed holes. So now that they've just shed those, we're going to give those first leaves a little bit of time to open up. Also, one of the things that you want to check out with sunflowers And how you know that they're ready to harvest is by tracking the growth of their true leaves. So take a look between the two first leaves, and you can start to see where the true leaves are going to come out. You want that first true leaf to poke out just a little bit, not too much, but you do want to see it. Timing is everything. If you do it too early, then you're not going to maximize your harvest. But if you do it too late, you run the risk of things going bitter and woody. So getting the timing right here is key. If you take a look right in the middle of some of these, you can just barely start to see the true leaves emerging. I think we'll be good with another 12 hours, maybe 8, and then we'll bring these upstairs and we'll harvest them. All right, here we are, ready to harvest our pea shoots. We've got our shoots, we have containers for the harvest, we've got a sharp knife, we have a sharp pair of scissors, if that's what you want to use instead, which is fine. We've got our hands washed, we've got a glove on the harvesting hand. Now we're just going to take our time, we're going to have even strokes, we're not going to saw back and forth, and we're not going to pull up when we harvest. Remember, we don't want to pull any of the roots out. We just want to cut these. We want to get as low and as close to the soil as possible without bringing any soil with us into the containers. So take your time and make nice even cuts. Here we go. Just grab a handful and just slowly but surely get your knife through and you harvest your pea shoots. Look at that. And just continue all the way through the tray. Now remember, if you want to use sharp kitchen shears instead of using a sharpened knife, that's totally fine. The same principle applies. Just grab a handful and don't pull up. Just shear off with the scissors and cut as you go. Take your time. You might find that you have more control using the scissors, and that's perfectly fine. Do whatever you feel most comfortable with. Remember, safety is key. You're working with sharp tools here, so you want to go slowly, and you also don't want to use anything that is going to intimidate you. You don't want to be afraid of harvesting. So if scissors work better for you than a knife for those reasons, then go ahead and do it. Just take it slowly, and your tray will be harvested in no time. And just like that, our pea shoots are harvested. We got a yield of about 5 ounces, which basically doubled the amount that we seeded into the tray. We put 70 grams in the tray. We pulled about 140 grams out of the tray. Really successful harvest for us, and I can't wait until in another 12 hours we finish things off by harvesting our sunflower shoots. See you then. All right, it's been 10.5 days. It's time to harvest our sunflower shoots. These are looking great. You can see how some of the true leaves are coming out. This is what you want to look for so you know that they're ready to harvest. Also notice how a good bit of the seed holes have popped off. That's because we kept this nice and moist. We want to make sure that we keep this moist all the way throughout the process. That's why we top water. We top water so these holes can stay a little bit wet, and that means that the leaves can more easily shed them. So we have everything we need. We have our shoots, we have our containers for harvesting, we have our knife, we have our scissors. Let's get going. Now remember, you want nice even strokes with the knife. You don't want to really dig in. Get as close to the soil as you can, but it's okay if you're leaving a 1/2 inch or 1 inch of the plant above the soil. Also remember that we're grabbing a good handful, but we're not pulling up. We don't want to uproot these little plants. We just want to hold on to them and stabilize them while we're cutting. And of course, if you prefer, you can always use kitchen shears for harvesting. Notice how the soil is a little bit dry. That was intentional. I haven't watered these shoots for over 12 hours. You want to give at least 12 hours between watering and harvest because you don't want the leaves to be wet when you harvest. Once you harvest and pack these, any moisture on the leaves will promote mold, which you want to avoid. When you're harvesting, you'll notice that there are still some seed holes on some of these shoots, and that's okay. What I do is I set out 2 containers. I put the harvest in one, and then piece by piece, I grab the shoots and put them into the new container, removing the holes if they're still on the leaves. You want to be as gentle as possible, but even still, you might end up tearing a leaf or two. That's totally fine. Those will just be the first ones that you eat. And that's it. Our sunflowers are harvested. We got about 4.5 ounces harvested, which is a great yield for the amount of sunflower seeds that we sowed. Now all that's left to do is to pop them into an airtight container and store them in the fridge until we're ready to eat them. I want to encourage you to give microgreen growing a shot. It might seem a little bit intimidating at first, but if you follow a few key steps, it's actually fairly straightforward. When you're starting out, stick to some of the easier ones, like the ones that I grew in this video. And once you get into the groove, you'll open up a whole new world of microgreens for you to grow indoors year-round. Happy growing!